Part 1, I discussed a brief UFO history of New Mexico and concluded with the Sandia National Laboratories at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque. Sandia Laboratories and the adjoining Manzano Underground Facility play a major role in the history of Paul Benowitz, perhaps the most important figure in the initial Dulce base rumors. Other personalities are Myrna Hansen, who had claimed that she and her son were abducted to an underground facility in northern New Mexico in 1980, if I'm not mistaken. Tom Adams, who began to investigate cattle mutilations in the Dulce area since around 1975. Ann West, who claimed to have obtained information from an alleged Thomas E. Costello, who had claimed to be a security guard at a secret underground facility in Dulce. John Lear, who received information from Ann West and who, in 1987, wrote a hypothesis on both Area 51 in Nevada and the alleged Dulce base in New Mexico. Tal Levesque, an enigmatic personality also known as Tal or Jason Bishop, who claimed to have personally known Thomas E. Costello after Tal Levesque and his wife lived in Santa Fe in 1979 and 1980. Tal claimed to have known this person in Santa Fe. There's no factual evidence that Thomas Edwin Costello even actually existed. Krista Tilton, who also claimed to have been abducted to the Dulce underground base and wrote the piece, The Benowitz Papers. Branton, also known as Alan B. DeWalton or Bruce Walton, who received information from Tal Levesque and others and began to compile those information in a book called The Dulce Book or The Dulce Wars later on. William Bill Moore, who in 1980 wrote a book about Roswell entitled The Roswell Incident, together with Charles Berlitz, which sparked a renewed interest in the alleged Roswell crash of 1947. Richard C. Doty, OSI of Kirtland Air Force Base, late 1970s and early 1980s. Bob Lazar, who in 1989 was the first to bring about the topic of an alleged confrontation between select U.S. forces and unknown entities in an underground base in the United States, without specifically naming whether the incident took place under Groom Lake, Nevada, or at the alleged Dulce underground base in New Mexico. And Phil Schneider, who in 1995 began to claim that he had worked in a construction project involving the alleged Dulce base in New Mexico and who claimed to have been there during the 1979 altercation between the U.S. forces and unknown entities in the Dulce base. This is reportedly Ann West. Krista Tilton wrote this piece, The Benowitz Papers. Paul Benowitz was the president of his defense contractor company, Thunder Scientific Corporation, located right next to the main gate of Kirtland Air Force Base. Today, his sons operate the business, still selling high-quality calibration equipments and military-grade humidifiers to the base. The sons still refuse to talk about their father, the late Paul Benowitz. Here's a rare photo of William Bill Moore. It was Bill Moore who sent me a 10-page packet on Area 51 in 1987. He seemed to have completely disappeared from the scene after his 1989 appearance at the controversial MUFON convention in Las Vegas. Gabe Valdez, one of the most important personalities in the entire Dulce-based theories. He was the New Mexico State Patrol officer assigned to be in charge of the entire Dulce area from the mid-1970s to the early 1990s. He investigated hundreds of cases of cattle mutilations in the Dulce area. Even after his retirement, he continued on his own, investigating Dulce and the alleged underground base there. His conclusion was that there is a base there, but that no aliens were involved. He passed away suddenly on August 7, 2011, at the age of 68. He refused to give specific details, saying that this topic is so sensitive that it should not be revealed to the public. Tal Levesque's alleged photo of a room inside an underground base, a Dulce underground biological laboratory. It was Tal Levesque who first came out with the underground tunnel connection schematic map of the American Southwest. The hub of the underground tunnel systems was in Dulce, New Mexico. He claimed that it even extended towards Area 51 in Nevada, Edwards Air Force Base in California, to Colorado Springs NORAD and Denver International Airport, as well as to Los Alamos National Laboratories, even to Kirtland Air Force Base. The only alleged photo of Thomas Edwin Costello. Unfortunately, there is no evidence whatsoever that he even existed. The only photo by Paul Benowitz of 3 objects allegedly entering the rocky area of the eastern peak of Archuleta Mesa. These are the 4 best books on the alleged Dulce base. The Dulce Wars, originally titled The Dulce Book by Branton or Alan B. Walton. Project Beta by Greg Bishop, the story of Paul Benowitz, national security, and the creation of a modern UFO myth. Highly recommended. Underground Alien Biolab at Dulce, a compilation of items of Dulce, published by Tim Beckley and his Inner Light Publications. And Anthony Sanchez's UFO Highway, which I highly recommend, which came out in early 2011, based on an alleged 3-hour interview allegedly conducted by Anthony Sanchez with a retired Air Force colonel in California. The reason I wrote the foreword to this book was because I felt that this book did bring a fresh new aspect or perspective of the Dulce base, not because I believed every single word of this book. I definitely think that this is a significant, must-read book. Anthony Sanchez, myself, and the Collado family of Dulce, New Mexico. Anthony has established an important relationship with this prominent Jicarilla Apache family of Dulce. The family fully supports the work of Anthony Sanchez. I also got to know this great family. The family is also convinced that there is a base under the Archuleta Mesa or under the Archuleta Mountain located northwest on the mesa. The Archuleta Peak with radio communications tower on top. A typical image of what people claim they see above the Archuleta Mesa. A typical saucer-shaped object over the mesa. Now this is not a real photo, but an artist's computer graphic image. Here is a fascinating report by Dulce resident Darren Vigil Gray, who described his amazing experience witnessing a flying saucer pass just over Highway 64 and witnessed by 22 students inside a school bus around 6:30 a.m. The bus was taking students from Dulce to a parochial school located in Lumberton next to Dulce and east of Dulce. The only photo of what could appear to be some type of ventilation shaft taken by Edmund Gomez, one of the sons of Manuel Gomez, the owner of the largest ranches in Dulce, formerly of course. Edmund Gomez was accompanied then by a Dulce police officer when they both were exploring this side of Archuleta Mountain in the early 1980s. Now here's a simple map of the Archuleta Mesa, a huge mesa stretching for 5 or 6 miles in both directions. The southern portion or the New Mexico portion is under the jurisdiction of the Jicarilla Apache Nation. The northwest portion of the Colorado side is under the jurisdiction of the Utes tribe of Colorado. The Best Western Hotel is there, the communications tower atop Archuleta Peak, the Navajo River that practically surrounds the mesa, the bridge area and the J2 dirt road becoming J9 road going further north. Here is County Road 357 from where one can view the eastern slopes of the Archuleta Mesa. In 2009, I decided to organize a public conference right in the middle of Dulce. I was getting tired of whether the Dulce base is just a fiction or a fact. It was with fear and trembling that I decided to hold a meeting in Dulce itself. I was afraid that they wouldn't let outsiders come into Dulce, and on top of that, to have a public conference about an underground base in Dulce. But fortunately, a member of the Cultural Affairs Committee of Dulce told me that I could have this conference. I was so surprised. It was the first and so far the only conference ever held in Dulce. It was called the Dulce Base Fact or Fiction Conference. This successful conference was attended by more than 135 people, including many Dulce residents. Several former law enforcement officials of Dulce also participated and even testified at the conference, confirming that indeed there have been some strange sightings and incidences in Dulce. Early on the morning of the conference on Sunday, March 29, 2009, at around 6 a.m., 2 military helicopters hovered above the Best Western Hotel where the conference was held. Because of the large crowd, the fire department had informed us that the conference had to stop. Fortunately, at that very moment, Hoyt Velarde made a swift arrangement for us to move the conference a block away at a community meeting hall. It was at this afternoon session of the conference that residents testified that they had indeed seen 2 military helicopters hover over the hotel early that morning. Here's a photo by Dory Vigil of Dulce. He was taking a photo of the area near Dulce Rock. It was on March 1st, 2011, I believe. It was only after he developed the film that he noticed that there was an elliptical object on the right-hand corner. Notice the lights surrounding this elliptical-shaped object. This is the photo of a small transparent sphere found by Gabe Valdez near El Bado Lake area, just south of Dulce, a few years ago. Several others also reportedly found similar spheres in that area. Size of a pool, the ball. Dr. Howard Eliason, who used to live in Dulce for a while until recently, also saw this sphere when he and Gabe Valdez explored some areas near El Bado Lake, south of Dulce. Unfortunately, Gabe Valdez suddenly passed away on August 7th of 2011. A few months prior to that, he said he was going to take me to an interesting area of El Bado Lake, just south of Dulce. Yes, Gabe Valdez certainly took with him some secrets of Dulce. All his files, photos, and other documents are now in the possession of one of his sons. One of his sons is a New Mexico State Patrol officer, and the other, I'm told, works for the U.S. Air Force. I had the opportunity to meet both of them at Gabe Valdez's home in the spring of 2011, where I played live music for a family gathering. The idea of an underground base is not new. Large boring machines have existed from the early 1950s. Here's an opening of the Yucca Underground Nuclear Storage Area in Nevada. Here's a typical underground tunnel opening, typical of many such facilities, even in Australia. This one is at the Pine Gap facility in Australia. This is the Helendale Lockheed facility in Southern California. A huge door is movable and can cover the entire opening. This facility was said to be a radar cross-section facility for stealth technologies. And finally, here's a great nighttime photo of the famous Area 51 or Groom Lake complexes in Nevada. This photo was taken by my colleague Gary Solani, a longtime Area 51 investigator. Some say that there is a symbolic connection between Area 51 in Nevada and the alleged Dulce underground base in New Mexico. Some even say that there is actually a physical connection there. Who knows? This is Norio Hayakawa of Rio Rancho, New Mexico.